10 minutes closer to heaven. Faith. Welcome back to another day of getting closer to heaven. I'm glad you're here because it means you're interested in getting closer to heaven. But I want to be clear about something. Spending these 10 minutes with God isn't going to make any of us a Christian. But our hope is that it draws us closer to Jesus and makes us better Christians. How we're going to get closer to God is we're going to spend time with Him. And in this series, we're going to spend 10 minutes a day focusing on a specific passage of Scripture. And for that passage, we're going to come up with a title, and then we're going to come up with, from that passage, the best supporting verse for that title. And then we're going to end with a challenge for ourselves. So let's get started with our next passage. Galatians chapter 1, verses 11 through 17. Now I want you to know, brothers, that the gospel preached by me is not of human origin. For I did not receive it from a human being, nor was I taught it, but it came through a revelation of Jesus Christ. For you heard of my former way of life in Judaism, how I persecuted the church of God beyond measure and tried to destroy it, and progressed in Judaism beyond many of my contemporaries among my race, since I was even more a zealot for my ancestral traditions. But when God, who from my mother's womb had set me apart and called me through His grace, was pleased to reveal His Son to me, so that I might proclaim Him to the Gentiles, I did not immediately consult flesh and blood, nor did I go up to Jerusalem to those who were apostles before me. Rather, I went into Arabia and then returned to Damascus. Okay, now it's time for me to give you my ABC, my title, best verse, and challenge for today's passage. My title is Anybody Can Be Changed. Think about Paul the Apostle. Here was a guy whose job was to go around and butcher Christians. And then when you look at his life after conversion, it really is a total 180. He went from being a killer of Christians to the greatest apostle there was. That has to be an act of God. Okay, my best supporting verse for my title is verses 15 and 16a. But when God, who from my mother's womb had set me apart and called me through His grace, was pleased to reveal His Son to me. So my title, Anybody Can Be Changed. Why do I think these verses support that? Look at who's doing the changes. But when God took action. God set Paul apart. God called Paul. God was pleased. God revealed His Son. Look at how Paul starts this passage off, talking about himself. And then God steps in verse 15 and is taking action. He does these things. He calls Paul. He sets him apart. He reveals himself to him. That is what changes Paul. Paul doesn't change himself. Paul doesn't wake up one day and say, hey, I think I'm going to be a Christian. Paul wasn't having a hard life. He was well respected. He had everything going for him. See, so many people turn to God only when life gets hard for them. Not Paul. Not the true Christian. I want to be careful here. I want to make sure you're hearing what I'm saying. I'm not saying that God does not use hard times to call people to Himself, but I think we need to be really careful. We should really examine ourselves. If the only time we're thinking about God, if the only time we're interested in God is when something is going wrong, I think we really need to question ourselves. So, all of that to get to my challenge. What am I going to take away from this today? What am I going to take away from anybody can be changed and that God is doing all of this stuff in our lives? Well, I'm going to take away that I need to let God change me. I need to ask God to change me. And then after I ask Him to change me, I should just start acting like He already has changed me. Because if I'm honest about it, if I'm not just calling out to God because I'm having a hard time, but I'm calling out to God because I really want Him to change me. Not some surface kind of change, but man, change me from within all the way to the outside. Then I better start acting like He's going to do it because He's watching and He wants to know I mean it. Just saying a few words, I honestly don't think that's going to cut it with God. He needs to see that I'm serious about what I'm asking Him to do. So that's my challenge. I'd really like to know what your challenge is. I'd like to know what your title is. I'd like to know what your best verse is and what you're taking away from this. That's it for today. Thanks for spending time with me again. I hope we all get closer to heaven today. Go be the best you can be. The world needs it, and I want you to be the best you can be. Please remember to like and subscribe. Leave a comment so I know how you're doing, and share this with a friend too. Thanks. God bless. See you soon.